Life is way too bland when you only have one option to choose from. Yes, the world is great and should be enjoyed by everyone, but there are times when you need to spice things up. So with that said, let's turn to the big wheel and find out what event we will be seeing our contestants competing in. Greetings and welcome to Checkpoint Gaming Gaslands. For this episode, we will cover and consolidate ways to play Gaslands. When it comes to that of playing the game, there are 15 total scenarios divided into 3 broad categories that you can choose from. With selecting a scenario, you may just choose which scenario you would like to play, or you can roll a 1die6 on any of the associated categories that they belong to. You can take it one step further and roll a 1die3 or a 1die4 and have chance to choose which category you will play in, and then have that 1die6 choose which of the associated scenarios you can play. With the 3 categories, they consist of televised event scenarios, wasteland skirmish scenarios, and special event scenarios. There's also the Savage Highways campaign, but that will be addressed in its own episode. With the televised event scenarios, they consist of Arena of Death, Capture the Flag, Death Race, Flag Tag, and Saturday Night Live. With Wasteland skirmish scenarios, they consist of Automated Salvage, Express Delivery, The Revolution will be televised, Scavenger Party, and Zombie Bash. With special event scenarios, they consist of Big Game Hunter, Desert Strike, Monster Truck Smash, Tank Commander, and Truckosaurus. With determining turn order, the player who is in pole position will activate first in each gear phase, with activation rotating clockwise. With determining pole position, it is done through a roll-off. Pole position will also change between players under the following conditions. For all scenarios except for Death Race, Monster Truck Smash, and Express Delivery, pole position will move clockwise at the end of each gear phase. In regard to Death Race, when the current holder of pole position passes a gate other than the starting gate with any of their vehicles, then that player will have to pass pole position to another player. This other player can be anyone of their choice. With Monster Truck Smash, the monster will always be in pole position. For Express Delivery, when the player who possesses pole position becomes the leader, then said player will have to immediately pass pole position off to the player found to their left. Except for Death Race and Monster Truck Smash, players take turns placing spawn points that are no larger than 20mm on the tabletop, starting with the player who's in pole position. With these spawn points, they represent where the player's vehicle will respawn once they re-enter the game. These spawn points must be at least medium range away from the play area edge and double range from any other spawn point. In regards to Monster Truck Smash, the spawn placement rules just mentioned will only apply to that of the mice players. For the monster player, they must deploy their spawn point in the center of the play area. In regards to vehicle placement, except for Death Race, players take turns deploying their vehicles within short range of their spawn point, starting with the player who is in pole position. With Death Race, players take turns deploying their vehicles in first rank of the starting gate, touching the starting line and starting with the player who is in pole position. When placing these vehicles at the starting gate, the player's vehicles are not allowed to touch one another. When placing, the vehicle must be placed at least a finger's width apart on all sides of the vehicle. When the first rank is no longer able to hold any vehicles that meet the deployment requirements, then vehicles are to be placed into the second rank, and so on, with the same deployment rules being in effect. In regard to the train setup, the play area is to represent a dystopian demolition derby arena for the scenarios other than Automated Salvage, Death Race, Express Delivery, Scavenger Party, The Revolution will be televised, and Zombie Bash. For Automated Salvage, Express Delivery, Scavenger Party, The Revolution will be televised, and Zombie Bash, the play area is to represent a post-apocalyptic wasteland, not unlike the Mad Max franchise. For Death Race, the play area is to represent a post-apocalyptic racetrack. In regard to respawning, it is allowed for all scenarios except Arena of Death. The only way a player can respawn is through the use of audience votes. When respawning, the vehicle must do so within short range of the controller's spawn point. The exception to this is with Death Race, where the respawning vehicle must do so with the last gate that they cleared. With most scenarios, weapon attacks are permitted in Round 1, Gear Phase 1. The exception to this is Death Race, where weapon attacks are not permitted until the respective vehicle passes through Gate 1. Before passing Gate 1, all weapons are disabled. However, all vehicle upgrades are active and smash attacks are allowed to be made. With playing, it can be done in one of 2 ways. The first way is to just play the one-off Wasteland Scrap or Death Sports. The second way is to go about playing a series of games in a campaign. With a campaign, there are 3 different ways you can go about executing it. These different campaigns consist of escalating seasons, championship seasons, and televised seasons. When it comes to that of the escalating season, it is used to grow, improve, and expand a player's team over a number of different scenarios. At the beginning of a season, each team will start off with an agreed upon number of cans for the player to use to build their team. Before the beginning of each scenario, excluding the first one, each team will receive an agreed upon number of bonus cans for the player to spend. And if a new player joins the game partway through the season, then give that player the initial number of cans plus any additional cans the other players have gained from the second scenario onward. With the championship season, it is meant to crown a victor upon the conclusion of a given season. During the course of the championship season, players will be awarded championship points at the end of each scenario according to how they placed during the scenario. If the player earns first place, then they will be awarded with 5 championship points. If the player earns second place, then they will be awarded with 3 championship points. If the player earns third place, then they will be awarded with 1 championship point. But if the player earns fourth place or lower, then they will not be awarded any championship points. With the televised season, it consists of a detailed campaign that consists of races, of racing scenarios, and wasteland skirmishes. In order to play a televised season, you'll need at least 2 players wanting to play a series of linked scenarios while using the same vehicles. This season will also consist of a televised schedule where there is a fixed number of televised events accompanied by any number of wasteland skirmishes. In order to construct this schedule, the players will agree upon how many televised events they want to play, followed by establishing a schedule before playing the first scenario. To help establish this schedule, use the following method. You can use a 1 die 6 to decide upon the scenario, or you can simply choose one. With the die 6 method, a roll of 1 or 2 will result in a death race. On a roll of a 3, you'll have Arena of Death. On a roll of 4, you'll have Capture the Flag. On a roll of a 5, you'll have Flag Tag. And on a roll of 6, you'll have Saturday Night Live. When it comes time to play a televised season, as long as you have more than half of the players present, then you can play the next event in the schedule. Otherwise, if the players prefer to do so, you will play a wasteland skirmish scenario. In order to generate a skirmish scenario, you can use a 1 die 6 to decide upon the scenario, or you can simply choose one. With the die 6 method, on a roll of 1, you'll have Army and Salvage. On a roll of a 2, you'll have Express Delivery. On a roll of 3 or 4, you'll have Scavenger Party. On the roll of 5, then the Revolution will be televised. And on a roll of 6, you'll have a good old-fashioned Zombie Bash, which is a graveyard smash. It is also possible for a player to gain resistance points during the season. With these resistance points, they are largely kept secret. With that said, it is possible for a player to trigger the Revolution will be televised scenario. With triggering this scenario during a televised season, it can be done before any televised event scenario, as long as the last scenario was not the Revolution will be televised and a player is yet to trigger this scenario. This is determined by the handicap bonus table found on page 159 of Gaslands Refuelled. All unspent audience votes will be lost once the scenario comes to an end. Before each televised event, any player who possesses resistance points may secretly take 1 sabotage token for every 3 resistance points that they possess. During that scenario, the player may choose to reveal the number of resistance points that they have and spend a sabotage token to trigger any of the following effects: hidden explosives, do not adjust your set, fix your brakes, and resistance cache. With hidden explosives, the player may select a point anywhere on the play area will cause an explosion 4 die 6 attack with a blast rule effect against every vehicle found within medium range, and this may be done at any point. With do not adjust your set, when the player would normally spend audience votes, they may spend a sabotage token instead. Doing so will activate a single audience vote effect. With fix your brakes, immediately before performing a flip check, the player may spend a sabotage token in order to cause their vehicle to automatically flip instead of having to roll for it. With resistance cache, the player may spend a sabotage token in order to immediately give the active vehicle grenades with 5 ammo. This must be done at the start of the vehicle's activation. After revealing your resistance points and spending your first sabotage token of the scenario, said player is not allowed to gain or spend audience votes for the remainder of the scenario. At the end of each campaign scenario, go through the following steps. First, deal with spoils. Second, deal with contacting the resistance. Third, deal with damage and injuries. Fourth, deal with the workshop. When actions performed and achievements obtained during a scenario will reward the player with championship points. Doing well in a wasteland skirmish can provide a player with money they can spend to repair and improve their vehicles. After each scenario, refer to the table as found on page 161 of Gaslands Refuelled. With this table, add any cans to the team's stash and any championship points to the player's championship points pool. With earning of championship points, players may only obtain them when the scenario is part of the televised schedule. When it comes to that of awarding plays, only half of the competing players, rounding up, are allowed to place in any given scenario. With the remaining players, they will gain no championship points. With the player that doesn't place during the scenario, they may choose to gain 3 resistance points. With these resistance points, they must be written down and kept a secret. In regards to any cans that are not spent improving a vehicle, they are able to be placed within the player's stash. When a vehicle is wrecked during a scenario, the controlling player must roll a 1d6. If the vehicle is a lightweight, then add 1 to the roll. If the vehicle is a heavyweight, then subtract 1 from the roll. With the number you get, add that number of dents to your vehicle and then see what happens. For the vehicle wreck table, turn to page 162 of Gaslands Refuelled. With weapons and perks that are lost in this manner, they may be rebought using the player's can stash. If a vehicle suffers a vehicle destroyed, driver dead result, then it is permanently removed from the player's team. All the weapons, upgrades, and perks that the vehicle possessed will also be permanently lost. With the dents, they are recorded on each of the vehicle's dashboard. In addition to this, they only affect the vehicle wrecked roll. They may also be spent on injuries perks. With the injuries perks, they can be bought before or after a game or rolling on the vehicle wreck table. When it comes to injuries, a vehicle is allowed to have any number of them. It is just not allowed to have the same injury twice. And after selecting an injury, remove the listed number of dents from the affected vehicle. For a list of injuries, take a look at page 163 of Gaslands Refuelled. Vehicles, weapons, and upgrades are capable of being sold, but only at half their initial price, rounding down when necessary. Perks, however, are not allowed to be sold. Cans are also allowed to be traded to buy new vehicles, weapons, perks, and upgrades. To buy new vehicles, weapons, upgrades, and perks. The spoils from a scenario may also be spent on any member of the team and may also be stashed away for larger purchases down the road. Anything found in the vehicles, weapons, upgrades, and perks list are allowed to be bought as long as the team has access to buy them during the vehicle construction step. An example of this can be seen with tanks only being allowed for Rutherford teams or electrical weapons only being allowed for Michigan teams. When it comes to crews and perks, they are permanently associated with the vehicle that they are assigned to. With that said, perks may not be transferred between vehicles and are lost when a vehicle is sold. When buying a new vehicle, they are without perks. With Arena of Death, it is Gasland's version of a demolition derby. But unlike your traditional demolition derby found in real life where vehicles just smash into each other until they are no longer able to run, Arena of Death throws inactive weapons and the imminent threat of death for all of its participants. This can be seen with the win condition for this particular scenario. At the end of any given gear phase, if only one player has a vehicle remaining in play, then the scenario will come to an end and that given player will win. In addition to other weapons found on any given vehicle, gun turrets are also found throughout the arena. The number of gun turrets found in any given scenario is determined by dice roll. Before the scenario begins, roll 2d6 to determine the number of gun turrets that are to be deployed. Starting with the player who is in pole position, take turns deploying the gun turrets until all of them have been deployed. With these gun turrets, they can be deployed anywhere on the play area as long as they are not touching any vehicle or terrain. With the nature of the gun turrets, they count as being middleweight destructible obstacles. They are allowed to be targeted with shooting attack and they possess 4 hull points. When it comes to their own shooting attacks, they automatically make 2d6 attack and will target the first vehicle that ends its movement step within medium range of it in any gear phase. When they are targeted by a gun turret, the target vehicle may evade these shots as normal. With automated salvage, the point of this scenario is to go about obtaining as much salvage as possible. With the win condition for this particular scenario, it is to be the player with the most salvage points at the end of the scenario. This scenario will last until only one vehicle remains within the play area or after 3 rounds have elapsed. If this scenario is part of a televised season, then at the end of the scenario, each player will gain cans equal to the salvage points they obtained during the scenario. With this scenario, it contains the following special rules. With magnetic scavenger hooks, when the active vehicle's movement template or final position is within short range of an enemy vehicle, then it will gain 1 salvage point. So as long as your vehicle comes within short range of the enemy vehicle at any point during its movement step, your vehicle will gain 1 salvage point. With Ramshackle, once per turn, if the vehicle suffers damage, then place 1 salvage counter touching any points on the vehicle's side edge. If the vehicle's movement template or final position overlaps a salvage counter, then that vehicle will gain 1 salvage point and the salvage counter is to be removed from the play area. With Scrapper, if a vehicle becomes disqualified, it does not count as being destroyed and it may not respawn. With Twisted Metal, if a vehicle becomes destroyed, then it will lose all of its salvage points. With Big Game Hunter, the players are on a hunt for large game. But unlike the stereotypical big game hunt you would engage in while in Africa, you are on the hunt for giant mutated animals. With these giant mutated animals, they consist of insects and lizards that are also radioactive. Think of it as an equivalent to the 1954 movie Them, where they have to deal with giant mutated ants. With the win condition for this scenario, a winner to be declared, one of the 2 following conditions will need to be met. 1. The team that has 2 or all remaining creatures within short range of their vehicle of the vehicle's spawn points, or 2. No creatures remain in play and the team with the most kills are declared the winner. With the deployment of these creatures, players take turns placing a creature within double range of the table center, starting with the player who is in pole position. The player who is in pole position will also get to deploy 1 more creature upon the play area. With this additional creature, it is to be placed at the center of the play area. With each creature, besides being giant radioactive freaks, they are also considered to be heavyweight, a crew value of 1, and have 20 hull points. When activated, the creatures count as being in the same gear as the current gear phase. Each creature may also activate multiple times during a single gear phase. In regards to combat, each creature is armed with a turret-mounted flamethrower with infinite ammo and rams on every facing. When they are subject to a shooting attack, they have an evade value as if they were in gear 3. If they are involved in a collision window, the creatures will always declare a smash attack as their reaction. The creatures also have special abilities it gets to use during gameplay. With these abilities, they consist of Enraged, Roar, and Acidic Ichor. With Enraged, it allows the creature to activate after a vehicle targets it with an attack and causes 2 or more damage. When activated, it is done so by the player that meets the triggering conditions. If multiple creatures are targeted to activate in one activation, then the triggering player will cause 1 creature to activate and the other creatures will remain inactive. With Roar, it allows the creature to pivot for free at the start of its activation. If it does, then it must pivot to face the last vehicle to attack it. With Acidic Ichor, when the creature loses 1 or more hull points, then it will make a 1d6 attack against each vehicle within medium range at the end of this step, and this occurs once per step. With Capture the Flag, like its namesake, its objective is to go out and obtain flags that are controlled by the other team. But unlike the traditional game of Capture the Flag, this scenario replaces the flesh and blood players with weaponized vehicles. After deployment of the vehicles, each player will place a flag on just one of their vehicles. In order to make gameplay easier, place the flag on the dashboard of the selected vehicle. Once a single vehicle is in position of 2 flags, then the game will end and that vehicle will be declared the winner. In regards to the flags, in and of themselves, they are classified as lightweight, destructible obstacles. To represent a flag on the tabletop, use an object that is 30 mm in diameter or smaller. Vehicles are able to pick up these flags if the movement template or final position will touch the flag in one way or another. A vehicle is also allowed to drop a flag that it possesses. To do this, it has to be done at the end of the vehicle's activation. From there, the player may place the flag it possesses anywhere within short range of the vehicle. With flags that are obtained by a vehicle, they are to be placed onto the vehicle's dashboard. And when the vehicle wrecks, then place the flag onto the play area. The flag is allowed to be placed anywhere as long as it touches the wreck. With Death Race, it contains a number of vehicles that participate in a race to the finish. With this finish, it can consist of the first vehicle to cross the finish line all the way up to all the participants dying in bullets and explosions. That touches upon the means to win a death race. To race through all the gates on the play area in order and travel through the gates in the proper direction faster than your opponents or to be the last vehicle standing. With that said, the game ends and a winner declared when the first non-helicopter or non-gyrocopter will pass through the finish line with only one player that has at least one vehicle left in play at the end of any gear phase. With setting up the play area, have at least 3 gates on the field that are at least one long straight away from each other. For the gate's orientation, set them however you wish. But with its orientation, it only has one correct way for a vehicle to enter it and have it count as clearing that gate. With these gates, determine which one is the starting line and which one is the finish line. It is also possible for the start gate and the finish gate to be represented by the same gate. To help determine what the correct gate order is, go ahead and number each gate. In order for a vehicle to successfully cross the finish line and trigger the win condition, it must pass through all previous gates before crossing the finish line. With the creation of the gates, you can place two small obstacles exactly long straight apart. In regards to gate obstacles, they are considered to be middleweight obstacles. With the space found between these obstacles, it counts as being an open space. In addition to this, there is an invisible line that exists along the center point found between the two gate obstacles. If you want, a flat template of the same dimensions just described can be used and is treated as an open surface. With the beginning of the race, it is done on the starting line. Located behind the starting line is found the starting grid. This starting grid is where the players will deploy their vehicles. Vehicles count as passing a gate when part of said vehicle crosses the gate line while it's traveling through the gate in the correct direction. In order to successfully pass any given gate, the vehicle must have successfully passed through the previous gate. When the scenario begins, all vehicles in the race count as having already passed through the starting gate. If you're going to be using audience votes during the scenario and the vehicle that is currently in the lead passes through any given gate, then all other players will roll 1 die 6. With whatever the player rolls, add 1 for each gate as found behind the lead vehicle to that die roll. If the result is 6 or better, then that player will gain 1 audience vote. Accompanying this, when a vehicle is going to be respawned, it must be placed touching the gate line of the last gate that the vehicle passed through prior to wrecking. But when it respawns, it is allowed to face in any direction as long as the vehicle's front edge is touching that gate line. With Desert Strike, do not build your teams normally. Instead, players must build their teams consisting of only helicopters and gyrocopters. With that said, try the scenario with each team possessing 70 cans. With the win condition, there are one of two ways to determine this. The first means is to have a single vehicle possess 2 flags within short range of the vehicle's spawn point. The second means is after 3 rounds have been completed, the player with the most flags within short range of their spawn point will win. With setting up the terrain, deploy 6 rocket turrets in a rough circle with each turret found exactly double range from the center of the play area. With these rocket turrets, they are classified as middleweight destructible obstacles with 7 hull points each. With these rocket turrets, they are allowed to be targeted with shooting attacks and only with shooting weapons. In addition to this, the vehicle must be at least medium range away from the rocket turret. When dropped weapon templates overlap a rocket turret, the dropped weapon effects take immediate effect. The rocket turrets are allowed to evade these attacks. When evading, they count as being in gear 6. But when the rocket turret reaches 0 hull points and wrecks, they will always explode. And when it wrecks, the player that is responsible for it wrecking will gain 2 audience votes. I mean, who doesn't like exploding rocket turrets? They're so much fun to watch. It's like watching a fireworks show but on steroids. It is also dangerous to wipe out in the presence of a rocket turret. This is because at the start of each vehicle's wipeout step, each turret found in long range will automatically make a 6x6 shooting attack against the active vehicle. Luckily, the target is allowed to evade these shots as normal. With that taken care of, take turns deploying flags starting with the player who is in pole position. For these flags, have them found within double range of the center of the play area until there is at least 6 flags in play. There also must be at least 1 flag available for each player. With these flags, they are considered to be lightweight destructible obstacles. In order to represent these flags on the play area, use an item that is no larger than 30 centimeters in diameter. Vehicles are able to pick up these flags if their movement template or final position touches the flag in one way or another. A vehicle is also allowed to drop a flag it possesses. To do this, it has to be done at the end of the vehicle's activation. From there, the player may place the flag it possesses anywhere within short range of the vehicle. With flags that are obtained by the vehicle, they are to be placed onto the vehicle's dashboard. And when the vehicle wrecks, the player then places the flag into the play area. The flag is allowed to be placed anywhere as long as it is touching the wreck. When the flags are deployed, take turns deploying 1 toxic cloud template, starting with the player who is in pole position. Deploy these toxic cloud templates until there are at least 6 of them in play. There must also be at least 1 toxic cloud available per player. With these toxic cloud templates, they are roughly the same size as a large blast template. With these toxic cloud templates, they represent noxious clouds of radioactive dust that cannot be ignored by the airborne special rule. Thanks, Mars. When vehicles come into contact with these templates, they are considered to be distracted. The vehicle will also gain 2 hazards if its movement template or final position touches a toxic cloud. The upside to this is that if shooting template overlaps the toxic cloud template before it reaches its target, then the target is not allowed to be attacked. With express delivery, think of it as the participants reviving the Pony Express, but instead of using horses, the participants use mobile death machines in order to compete against their competitors and deliver their package. With how this scenario is played, it is divided into 2 rounds, with each round consisting of a race across the play area with the terrain being changed between rounds. The objective of this scenario is to score 2 victory points, with the objective of each round consisting of each player getting their team from one edge of the play area to the other. In order to obtain 1 victory point for a maximum of 1 victory point per player in each play area, a vehicle will need to exit the current play area through the exit edge. With the layout of the play area, nominate one play area edge as the entry edge, which will make the opposite edge the exit edge. The first vehicle to reach the exit edge will be removed from the play area and will be marked as a leader. To exit the play area, the vehicle's movement templates for final position will need to overlap the exit edge. With the leader vehicle and all other vehicles that exit the play area via the exit edge during the same gear phase, mark them as 1. With all vehicles that exit the play area in the next gear phase, mark them as 2. Repeat this process until you can mark the exiting vehicles as 6. All vehicles that are still in the play area after marking the vehicles as 6 will become disqualified from the scenario. With all vehicles that are marked with the numbers 1 through 6, leave a marker or other indicator of where each vehicle exited the play area. And if all vehicles manage to exit the play area before reaching the marking of 6, then stop at whatever number is reached and ignore the remaining numbers. Once the play area has been cleared of vehicles, take turns rearranging the terrain found in the play area while leaving the marker point in place. With the terrain rearrangement, no terrain is allowed to be placed in long range from the entry edge. Once this rearrangement has been completed, this counts as a new play area and the second round can begin. In this new round, deploy all of the vehicles marked as 1 with the gear phase starting at 1. When the round moves into gear phase 2, deploy all the vehicles that are marked as 2. Repeat this process until all of the marked vehicles have been deployed. When it comes to that of deploying the vehicles, place them on the entry edge exactly opposite from its exit point as presented by its respective marker point. With the deploying of these vehicles, they remain in the same gear that they exited the play area in. They also retain all of the hazards and damage that they obtained in the previous round. When a single player scores 2 victory points, perform the following steps before ending this scenario. Have the other players continue to play until all of the vehicles have reached the exit area edge of the current play area or have been disqualified from play. Once all vehicles have reached the exit edge or have been disqualified, declare the first player to have reached 2 victory points the winner. If you are playing a televised season, then the teams will earn the following number of cans for exiting the second play area. First, roll 1d6 to earn that number of cans during the post-game sequence. Second, roll 1d6 for each victory point that the player had scored. Third, if the player ends the scenario with their own delivery slip in their possession, they will gain 4d6 cans. In regards to these delivery slips, each player will write down their name on a slip of paper at the start of the scenario, fold it, and then place it into a communal container. Once all players have done this, have the delivery slips be randomly handed out to the players. Once possession of this delivery slip, each player is allowed to check said slip. You should also keep this information secret. With these delivery slips, it is possible for them to be exchanged between players. This is done when vehicles belonging to different players are involved in a collision. Once this collision occurs, each player immediately swaps slips after they resolve the collision. The objective of this scenario is to be the first player to score 3 victory points. Once a player scores 3 victory points, the game will come to an end and said player will be deemed the winner. In order to obtain a victory point, the player will need to come into contact with another player's flag. However, you are not allowed to grab your own flag in this way. With deploying these flags, each player will need to deploy a flag within medium range from their spawn point, accompanied by being within medium range of the play area edge. If a player does not have a flag in play at the start of any gear phase, then they will need to redeploy a flag that meets the aforementioned conditions. With the makeup of these flags, they are considered lightweight destructible obstacles. If you want to make things more interesting, you have the option of making the flags middleweight volatile obstacles. With representing the flag on the tabletop, use an object that is 30 millimeters in diameter or smaller. Once a vehicle aligns with the flag, go ahead and remove it from the play area. With Monster Truck Smash, it is basically a combination of a game of cat and mouse and the Monster Truck Rally. With determining the rules for this scenario, players will have to roll off. The player rolling the highest number will be declared the monster, with all other players being declared as mice. We also decide that the player rolling the lowest number is the monster, but this is up to you. With the win condition, the first player to reach 5 or more victory points at the end of any gear phase is declared the winner and the scenario will come to an end. But if no one has earned 5 victory points at the end of the third round, the scenario will come to an end and the player with the most victory points will be deemed the winner. With the monster and the mice determined, have each player deploy their vehicles. Once that is done, have the monster place 8 flags on the play area. With the placement of these flags, have them occupy the 8 points of the compass. With the placement of each flag, they are to be exactly long range from the center point of the play area and they cannot touch any piece of terrain. With these flags, they are considered to be lightweight, destructible obstacles. To represent these flags on the play area, use any object that is 30 millimeters in diameter or smaller. In order for a vehicle to pick up a flag, its movement template or final position will have to touch or overlap the flag. After picking up a flag, place it onto the vehicle's dashboard. It is important to note that the monster player's vehicle will have to ignore the flags at all times. If a vehicle wrecks, then place the collected flag back onto the play area. In doing so, the flags will have to touch the wreck. It is also possible for a vehicle to pass flags to one another. In order to do this, the vehicle carrying the flag will have to come into contact with another vehicle. After doing so and resolving any steps connected with the vehicles coming into contact, the vehicle may pass the flag to the other vehicle at the end of its activation. With that established, there are some special rules that we need to go over. First, we have squashed. With squashed, if one of the monster's vehicles causes at least 1 damage to a mouse vehicle using the smash attack, the target vehicle will become wrecked. After dropping its flags, if it has any, the wrecked vehicle will be removed from the play area and the monster will gain 1 victory point. Next, we have chalk 1 up. With chalk 1 up, if one of the vehicles controlled by a mouse that is carrying any flag have its movement template or final position come within short range of its spawn point, it will have to discard all of its flags and score 2 victory points per flag. Once this is done, the player must then deploy a new flag onto the play area that is exactly long range from the center of the play area in an empty compass point. The spawning flag must not touch any given piece of terrain or other vehicle. Finally, we have commercial break. With commercial break, if any vehicle that is not on the play area at the start of any given round is allowed to respawn for free. With this respawn, it must be placed within short range of its spawn point. With the revolution will be televised, it allows individuals who are pro-Earth sympathizers to temporarily take over televised broadcasts of Gaslands. This is done in the hopes of bringing attention to their cause of allowing Earth to get out from underneath the thumb of Mars and to once again stand on its own 2 feet. Like William Wallace, they just want freedom. With the win conditions, the first player to reach 3 victory points at the end of any gear phase is declared the winner and the scenario will come to an end. But if no one has earned 3 victory points at the end of round 3, the scenario will come to an end and the player with the most victory points will be deemed the winner. Before starting this scenario, each player will note a piece of terrain. This noting of terrain is connected with the special rule known as the uplink. With the uplink, at the beginning of the scenario, a new uplink is revealed to the players. Once doing so, the player in pole position will reveal the piece of terrain that they noted. If a vehicle collides with its uplinked piece of terrain, then the player controlling said vehicle will gain 1 victory point. Once a point is awarded, a new uplink is to be revealed. It is important to note that collecting a victory point and revealing a new uplink can only occur once per gear phase. If this scenario is played as part of a televised season, then the resistance broadcast rule is in place. With this rule, when a player would normally gain a victory point, the player may instead choose to gain a resistance point. With players that choose to take a resistance point during this scenario, then it will trigger the censorship special rule. With censorship, it prevents the player that gains any number of resistance points during the scenario from gaining any championship points as a result of this given scenario. With Saturday Night Live, players compete to win a number of different prizes awarded to them for entertaining the audience. This can be compared to the arcade game Smash TV, a slot machine or a kids' arcade area where they redeem collected tickets for a prize of their choice. With the win condition of this scenario, the first player to earn 15 victory points is deemed the winner. With the awarding of victory points, it can occur if they are within double range of an enemy vehicle at the time the victory point is awarded. At the start of the first round, whenever a special prize is going to be awarded, the player claiming the prize will roll 1d6. With the die roll, add the current gear number to the current round you're in. For example, if you're in round 1, gear phase 1, and you roll a 1, your result will be that of 3. And this result will indicate the special prize condition. During the course of the game and you get the same special prize as the previous special prize, then you will need to re-roll until you get a different special prize. To determine the special prize that is to be awarded, look at the special prize table found on page 134 of Gaslands Refuelled. In addition to this, when a vehicle or player meets the prize condition of the scenario and the special prize awarded, they will also claim one audience vote. From there, roll again to generate a new special prize. This is important because a player is not allowed to gain audience votes for claiming the same prize in a single activation. In addition to this, when a player gains audience votes, then said player will also gain an equal number of victory points. But it is possible for a player to earn audience votes without gaining victory points. If there are no enemy vehicles around that are within double range, then that player cannot earn victory points while also gaining audience votes. With Scavenger Party, you are basically on a treasure hunt and you want to gather as much treasure as possible during the scenario. With that said, it is represented by a series of crates found upon the play area. When setting up the play area, place 1d6 plus 6 crates in a rough circle exactly double range from the center of the play area. To represent these crates, use an item that is no larger than 30 millimeters in size. In order to win the scenario, one player will need to have obtained more than half of the initial crates found in the play area before the end of round 3. But if no one is able to obtain the necessary number of crates at the end of round 3, then the player with the most number of crates is deemed the winner, including any found in a vehicle as deemed as a scrapper. In regards to the crates, if a vehicle comes into contact with one of them, then the vehicle may pick up and place it onto its dashboard. If a vehicle wrecks, then its controller will have to place all of the crates that the vehicle has obtained onto the play area. In addition to this, these crates will have to touch the wreck. But if a vehicle becomes disqualified, then it holds onto the crates that it managed to obtain during gameplay. These crates will count toward the win condition of this scenario. If you are playing a televised season, then each player will gain 1d6 plus 1 cans for each crate held by just one of their vehicles at the end of the scenario. The maximum number of cans a player can obtain in this manner is 20. In addition to what has already been addressed, there are some special rules that we will need to go over. With Scrapper, any disqualified vehicles do not count as being destroyed and are not allowed to respawn. With loot boxes, the vehicle will gain a bonus item as determined by the loot box table found on page 140 of Gaslands when the vehicle picks up that crate. Each bonus item as is obtained does not require any build slots and may not gain any ammo through any means. These bonus items are also lost after being used, the vehicle becomes wrecked, or if the scenario comes to an end. With Tank Commander, it is a special condition setup where normal vehicle selection is not used. This is because this scenario basically consists of armies or the remnants thereof made out of nothing more than a tank battalion or division. It's basically just a tank versus tank combat. When constructing teams for this scenario, each player is given a Rutherford sponsored team that consists of 2 tanks. With each tank, it is armed with a 125mm cannon that begins the game as being front mounted. From there, decide if each player will get 10 additional cans for the purchase of weapons, upgrades, and perks. In order to win the scenario, the player will need to be the first person to obtain 3 kills. Each time a player causes an enemy tank to wreck, then that player will gain 1 kill. You also have the option of extending the length of this scenario. In order to do so, you can increase the number of kills needed to win up to 5. But the reverse is also true. If you want to play a shorter game, then reduce the number of kills needed to win down to 2. But this is left up to you. In regards to the ammo for the 125mm cannon, it is unlimited. Accompanying this, when a tank is wrecked, it will automatically explode. When it comes to the facing of the cannon, though it starts off as a front-mounted weapon, the player is allowed to spend 1 audience vote to change its facing. But once a new facing is declared, it will stay as such until the player spends another audience vote to change it again. The player is also allowed to spend 1 audience vote to make an extra shot with the cannon at any point when the player is allowed to spend audience votes. With that extra shot, it does not count as being a part of the tank's attack step. It is just an extra shot. And when the tank engages in a shooting attack against a target found within medium range, the attacking tank may re-roll all of the attack dice that failed to hit the target. When engaging in a shooting attack, if a tank manages to wreck an enemy tank, then the attacking tank will gain 2 audience votes. But with a tank that is removed from play, it can still get back into the fight. At the start of each round, any tank that is not in play may respawn for free. When respawning, it must be done so within short range of its spawn point. With Truckosaurus, it is your chance to relive a childhood dream and actually appear in an episode of The Simpsons. You basically participate in a demolition derby where you have to deal with Truckosaurus. In order to win this scenario, the first player to score 5 victory points will be declared the winner. But if you're playing with 2 players, then you're playing to 3 victory points. However, if the scenario reaches the end of round 3 without a player reaching the required number of victory points, then the player with the most victory points will be declared the winner. To represent Truckosaurus, choose or build a model that represents the Tyrannosaurus Rex constructed out of truck parts. With your model ready, place it in the center of the play area with the player in pole position selecting its facing. With the characteristics of Truckosaurus, it consists of the following. It is a heavyweight item that possesses a handling value of 2, a crew value of 4, and it has infinite hull. Since it cannot be hurt, think of it as a mechanized cousin of Cthulhu. In addition to this, it cannot push it and it cannot gain hazards. It also possesses a few perks. With these perks, they consist of boarding party, murder tractor, pivot in any gear, and up and over. It also possesses some weaponry. With these weapons, they consist of a turreted flamethrower, a turreted 125mm cannon, a turreted harpoon, a wrecking ball, and a ram on every facing. So basically, don't fuck with this thing. Doing so will be a bad idea. It also has infinite ammo for all of its weapons, and it is immune to the effects caused by weapons. Talk about IDDQD and IDKFA. Can we call in Doom Guy to help us take care of this thing? With all that said, let's move on to the scenario special rules. With Witness, if a vehicle declares a smash attack against Truckosaurus during its own activation, then it will gain 1 audience vote. With Truckosaurus Lives, it allows a player who possesses an active vehicle to spend 3 audience votes to activate Truckosaurus. With this activation, it occurs before the active vehicle's activation, assuming if the player was able to activate a vehicle in this given gear phase. Once activated, Truckosaurus will count as being in the same gear as the current gear phase. Truckosaurus is also allowed to be activated multiple times in a single gear phase. With Truckosaurus feeds, a player who activated Truckosaurus will gain 1 audience vote every time Truckosaurus will destroy a vehicle. A maximum of 1 victory point is gained when a friendly vehicle is destroyed by Truckosaurus during a single activation. Finally, we have Into the Danger Zone. With this special rule, it causes the controller of the vehicle that activates further than double range from Truckosaurus to lose 1 audience vote. With Zombie Bash, the play area has become infected with a zombie outbreak. As a participant in this scenario, it is your task to hunt down and eliminate these zombies. With the win condition for this scenario, it comes in a number of different ways. The first condition is when there are less than 10 zombies remaining upon the play area. The second condition is when 1 player has collected at least 20 zombies. The third condition is when there is only 1 vehicle remaining upon the play area. The fourth condition is when 3 rounds have elapsed. When one of these conditions have been met, the player with the most zombies is declared the winner and the scenario will come to an end. If the scenario is part of a televised season, then each player will gain 1 can for each zombie that they hold at the end of the game, with a maximum number of 20 cans being obtained. With this scenario, obtain a large number of roughly 15 to 20 millimeter tall figures to represent your zombies. A good rule of thumb is to have at least 10 figures per player. When deploying the zombies, arrange them roughly evenly around the play area. In regards to the zombies, they are not allowed to be attacked by the vehicles and they do not count as obstructions. In order for them to be collected, the vehicle's movement template or final position will have to come into contact or otherwise touch said zombie. If a vehicle is wrecked, then its controller must place 5 of the zombies that they collected back onto the play area. With placing them onto the play area, they must be within short range of the wrecked vehicle. With vehicles that become disqualified, they do not count as being destroyed and they are not allowed to respawn. So with that said, that is what you need to know about ways to play Gaslands. If you liked this episode, then feel free to give it a like, and if you want to stay up to date on any future episodes that we upload, go ahead and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/checkpointgaming. See you in the next episode, and happy gaming.